So then count them. Fifth time it is, in fact, in just under 4 years. Israelis heading to the polls to vote in that election that many say boils down to a referendum, well, on one man, Benjamin Netanyahu, the head of the Likud Conservative Party, bidding to stage a comeback at the head of a far-right coalition, even as he faces a corruption trial stemming from his years in power. Well, we're going to talk about the very latest then in today's Global Grid with Doug Herbert, who's joining us here on set. Good to have you with us, Doug.
Let's do it.
Netanyahu could well come out of this well, but he's doing well by getting into bed, if you like, with who exactly and turning his agenda more and more in what direction exactly?
Absolutely, Stuart. Listen, Netanyahu has been rampant on every political stage in Israel for years and years and years. It's the Groundhog Day of Israeli politics. He has in the past formed alliances with centrist parties, even with Islamist parties, in the name of cobbling together coalitions and to gain power. What's different now? In this context now, and you said it right, this is the fifth election in just under 4 years. You basically have Netanyahu vying for power in a context in which Israel's political landscape is more right-wing than ever before. We've said it a lot. This rightward lurch of the political spectrum in Israeli politics, not just in Israel. We're seeing this authoritarian, right-wing, far-right governments all over the place. But what's interesting here is this time, if Netanyahu were to regain power, and the polls, as of last Friday, when the last polls were allowed to be given on Israeli TV, showed that right now, with an alliance that he's trying to cobble together, an alliance of both ultra-religious, Zionist parties, ultra-conservative parties, he could gain 60 seats, which would be 1 seat short of the 61 needed to form that coalition. It would be the most right-wing, far-right extremist coalition in Israel's modern history. And why is that? Because this time around, Netanyahu is believed to be counting on the support of an ultra-right, a far-right religious Zionist bloc. It's an alliance. Number two within that religious Zionist alliance is a man named Itamar Ben-Gvir. And he is basically the head of a party called Jewish Power, which is exactly that. He used to be a fringe far-right figure, but in recent years he has gained stature, gained more credibility among a lot of the right wing of Israel's political spectrum. This is a man who was a son of Iraqi Jewish immigrants. He was born during the he grew up during the early years of the Palestinian Intifada, extreme anti-Palestinian views. He has advocated for basically the deportation of what he calls disloyal Palestinian citizens of Israel. Remember, the Arab minority is 20% in Israel. And recently, at a flashpoint neighborhood in East Jerusalem, where there were violent clashes between right-wingers and police, he actually drew a pistol and he shouted at the police to shoot a group of Palestinian protesters, giving you sort of a sense of what this man is about. Yet he is wildly popular among his constituents, especially among a lot of far-right young Israelis. This is a man that Netanyahu is about to get into bed with in the name of trying to form a coalition.
Let's talk about that 20% then, Doug. What does this election mean for that 20%, the Arab population?
They are fearful and afraid of the consequences, obviously, of having such a far-right extremist coalition. At the same time, a lot of the Arab minority, and I said there are 1.8 million of them, 20% of Israel's population, they are also extremely frustrated. They have sort of, if not given up hope, they're extremely resigned to what they see as an Israel which has completely ignored their concerns in terms of what they see as widespread discrimination across Israeli society, consigning them to essentially what they see as second-class citizen status. The occupation of the occupied territories, Palestinian territories, is more entrenched than ever. If this far-right coalition were to come to power, it would become even more entrenched. They're torn between what can they do? Do they have any power? There are seats in the Knesset. The current caretaker government of Prime Minister Yair Lapid is composed of some small Arab parties. They have seats in the Knesset, in the parliament. They feel, though, they need to obviously gain those seats to have a say, perhaps even to keep coalitions together. But they also feel very frustrated because they just don't feel like their voices are being heard. And here's the irony here. If there is low turnout among the Arab minority voters, that community in Israel, that will play right into the hands of Netanyahu. Netanyahu and his bloc don't want to see a lot of Arab voters because they know it will play against them. So that low turnout, which is a very stark possibility, could become a reality and could bring to power the very type of coalition that is most antithetical to the interests of these voters who might not show up in the Arab minority.
And you mentioned Yair Lapid there. I mean, could he not put together some kind of coalition?
He could. He's trailing right now. Both his party, this is the future, Yesh Atid party, is trailing behind Likud in terms of just the party vote. But also his alliance. Remember, Yair Lapid, I said he's a caretaker prime minister. And why is that? That is because the government that had ousted Netanyahu from power 16 months ago, that government was a broad, almost rainbow coalition of liberals, of centrists, and of even Arab parties. There were at least 3 small Arab parties in the coalition. Very improbable, very hard to keep together, almost no glue there. Could he do it? Sure, he could do it. And I think he does have confidence. But he's so far trailing behind, at least in the polls, the Netanyahu would-be far-right alliance. And even if he were to be able to get that alliance to be viable again and to cobble it back together. We saw that it collapsed in disarray last year, back in June, and that could happen again. It's going to be very hard to hold because there's so many ideologically diverse interests. But they are united in one thing, Stuart. I'll leave you at this. They're united in opposition to Benjamin Netanyahu. He's the one thing that all of Israel is either for or against.
Doug, thanks very much. Doug Herbert with Global Grid, our international affairs commentator here on France 24.